Skirt on, dip my body in glitter.
Alright, what we got going on today?
Welcome on into the Snappening, folks. My name is Mickey Mouse.
Oh boy. Here we go. Shiny logo.
Let's do cards 400.
All right.
How you doing, Infinity? How you doing? Hello guys, welcome back to the Educated Call Snap channel. You just saw one of their trailers for the Snappening. They were doing a Thanksgiving special and they invited me to play in a skit. I thought it was funny. Definitely check out their whole video. I've watched it through. Really hilarious. Lots of great moments in there. So, you know, instead of watching this video, honestly, I recommend you go watch their video. You know, I think it's better done, if I'm going to be honest. So, you know, definitely I wanted to shout them out here. Feel free, links in the description. Watch that first if you're going to watch this at all. That's my, you know, hope for you. But other than that, let's get started. We're going to be reviewing the December cards, maybe some of the January, but that's going to be our thing. Hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get started. So something interesting that Second Dinner is doing is that they're now not having those the first week. Usually there'll be that week where they'll have an old card, it'll be an old spotlight. What they've started doing since December is now the first week they have a new card as well. So they're not having any of those break weeks where, oh, you know, this week it's focused on Jeff, or this week it's focused on Galactus, you know, as the main thing to get. I do think it makes sense. Probably they've looked at their data and people aren't really spending for the older cards at a high frequency, probably because people have those cards, right? It's been months since this Spotlight system's been in, and pretty much all of the cards that people have wanted have rotated at least once. So people aren't really wanting to kind of go in and, you know, shell out for older cards. They want to include new cards in there. So I think they're starting in that. I do also hope this is kind of like an indication for series drops, though I'm not holding my breath, right? Because we've been saying that for a while, and there's been nothing really indicating that. They did say recently that they're going to have info around series drops soon, right? So that might mean that they are planning on at least informing us whether they're restarting or if something's changed their plans. So there's definitely some potential there. So we'll have to see, but it is interesting to have for a month, right, in terms of new cards, 4 to 5 actually, right, excluding the season pass a month. That's going to be a little bit harder because we do only have limited resources in terms of how many keys you can get per month. So it's going to be a little bit harder to get every card that you want. But I will say, like, currently it's been really somewhat easy to get the cards that you want. I don't think I've had too much issue getting like any particular card that I've needed or really wanted. So I think that's been good, but we'll see how it changes. I do think adding like an extra week where you have to get a card or have to think about it is definitely pretty difficult. But let's get into the actual cards. I'll see if I could do all 12 or 10 that we have here, but you know, we'll have to see. So first one, we have Sebastian Shaw. This is a season pass card, right? When this card permanently gains power, you gain +2 more power wherever that is. So it's probably going to be very, very likely used in Servo Surfer, right? Like that's where it jumps out to me. I'm trying to see if I can like have a better like angle. I like this angle a little bit better. But Silver Surfer, there's also those buff decks. I've been playing with a deck with like Forge, Nakia, that type of card, just to see how it feels. It's been okay. I will say, like, currently it's missing a late game bomb. Like if you were to play a deck that's just focused on buffing, right? You have like early game, right? You have the Forge, Mr. Sinister, Brew, like that's pretty solid. You can still run Absorbing Man. That's pretty solid early game. But the late game is pretty bad. Like you have like Black Panther if you want to go like Forge Black Panther, but it's like that's not worth the late game power when you have Goliath and stuff rolling around. So I do think Sebastian Shaw and Firestarter, right? Those two cards could really be like the key engine to kind of make that deck feel competitive. So this is also just good in just a buff deck, right? Surfer is also just generally a buff deck if you don't want to play like Firestarter late game. So seems good, seems playable. Season pass card, so a lot of people are going to have it. So I don't think this is going to be something that you're going to be like, oh my god, you know, it's just going to be part of the new meta. But seems pretty good. So you know, I should have a rating, right? Like 5, 4, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff. A Blob. Okay, so Blob is a unique card. Honestly, I would love, I don't know if it'd be balanced, to be fair, but if it said can't be moved or destroyed, I think that would make sense, because I do feel like the can't be moved is more thematic than more gameplay wise, right? Because there's not a lot of cards that can move things, especially you're playing this on the last turn, right? Like, what card can even move you last turn, right? Locations can move you, but that's usually not the last turn. So it's like Spider-Man last turn, like that's like the only thing, but like that's so irrelevant, right? But if it couldn't be destroyed, then it's like, okay, maybe I can build around it, right? So I do think you're probably gonna see this in Hella. Hella has the easiest time just playing lots of big cards in your deck and not making it feel super problematic, right? Because if you're running a ton of 4 and 5s, I guess you could also play Electro, right? That's the other line. You could play Electro, you could play Hella, discard in some capacity. There might be other decks that you could use it for. Maybe just Evolutionary Hulk or Infinite decks, right? Those also could do it, right? You could play like other than that. But generally, like, I'm not like super big fan of it, but I could see the decks where it does well. So it doesn't seem like a bad card, but it is a card that probably requires specific deck archetypes, and if you're not playing those archetypes, it's not a card you're going to be interested in. So I'm probably going to give it like a 5 out of 10. Not really super high on my list, but it does have a place in the meta, so that's at least good, right? Next up, we have Firestarter. I'm going to set straight away 10 out of 10. This card is probably too strong. I could definitely see it get adjusted. There's just a lot of synergies that you can do with this card that a lot of people have already talked about. But just you can buff the card, right, which is very obvious, where if you buff the card, it gets stronger. So if you're playing like Forge into Firestarter, that's you're buffing everything by 5 instead of 3. You can also buff with other cards in the game as well. So it's not like that's the only play you have. And then you want to be playing lots of cards on turn 5, right? So it's not like you're playing Sarah on 5, right? You have to play, you know, like one of the better hits is Mysterio, any of your 0-cost cards like Wasp or Yellow Jacket, or any 1s or 2s that just fit the curve as well. So there's just a lot of things you want to be doing on 5, and then you finalize the Firestarter on 6. And it's just a really nice power play that also kind of goes around Goliath in a way, right? So there's just a lot of good combos that I could see people make with this. So it's a pretty scary card. I do wonder if it's going to stay in this capacity, but we'll have to see. I do think, you know, one of the things it does open up is things like Shadow King, things like Valkyrie, right? Those cards haven't really seen like dominant play. But if this becomes like a pretty effective strategy, then maybe you start seeing those two tech answers kind of jump back into the meta. So, you know, hopefully there are counter plays that make sense for it. But just in a vacuum, this seems really, really, really good. So 10 out of 10 for me. Next up, we have Havok. So Havok's a pretty awkward looking card, right? You lose 1 max energy, so I'm pretty sure it just locks you into the energy you have. That seems to be the case where I don't know for sure, right? So, you know, obviously there's going to be more information from second dinner as it gets closer, but it seems like, let's say you play this on 2, you'll just be stuck on 2 for the rest of the game. So, you know, obviously you'll get like a 15 power card, but you know, it's you have no mana, so yeah, a little bit awkward. I do think there are some uses. A lot of people just say give it to your opponent, which is very toxic. And I hope that is not like a meta where they're just giving you negative max energy and you're just like having to sit there. You can't play your 6 drop or your 5 even, right? Because you usually play on 4. So you can't play your 5 or your 6. That would be really problematic. So I do wonder if that is how it's just going to be, like just a big disability. If that is the case and that is how people use it, right, then it's going to be probably pretty good. You know, probably 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, that kind of thing. If it is like not as awkward and it's just like you have 5 max energy or something like that, or 1 max energy from the max. So if you play this on 2, turn 3 you have 2, but turn 4 you have 3. That seems a little bit easier to deal with. It would also make this like a lot stronger. So I'm hoping it's that way where you don't feel too bad about running it. If it's like that, then I think it's probably an okay card. So, you know, generally, there's probably 2 ways about it, right? Where the first way, it's just toxic and it's still playable. Second way, it's a little bit easier to play with and can just feel all right. And it's also probably playable. So it's still like either way it performs, it seems to be a card you might play. So I'm going to give it 7 out of 10, actually. Next up, we have Selene, I believe. So this one afflicts the lowest power card in each player's hand, -3 power. So kind of like another junk synergy card where you can really just give your opponent things they don't want to play. Kind of like a Black Widow in terms of like, here's a card with little power that you don't really want to play, but maybe you need it for your comp, right? A lot of times this might hit a 0 cost card like Cerebro. I mean, not everyone's playing Cerebro, but like Iron Man, right? Kills Iron Man, kills, you know, well, Mystique probably might be fine, right? Because Mystique copies like Darkhawk and stuff like that. Darkhawk is another hit, right? Like that's true, right? And it does make those cards a lot harder to justify playing. So definitely can be a problematic tool. Same thing, right? If you're playing Selene, you probably have some synergies. The goblins are the easiest one, but you can also play Luke Cage yourself and just ignore it. So there's definitely some play. I do think most likely the people playing this are just going to play this on a Nihilist, right? And they give off this, and whatever card they have, right, you can also give off. So you know, if you hit Hood, right, you just give the Hood, blah blah blah. So this seems like a pretty effective Nihilist extra tool to play. So probably good. Junk's annoying. Junk's being played. I don't know if Junk's like strong or if it's just popular because it's a new card, right? So I could definitely see this being also very good. So I'm giving it what am I giving it? Like an 8 out of 7. I'm generous, aren't I? Everything's a 7 or 8. This one I could see being lower, to be fair. So we'll have to see. So don't trust that one. And then we have Skaar. So Skaar is a pretty interesting one. I believe this is the season pass for January. So this one just costs 2 less for each that have 10 or more power. It's interesting because She-Hulk or Shang-Chi got nerfed to 10. So this is like, hey, if you Shang-Chi me, I get a lot weaker, right? But being able to play this for 4 or 2 mana is pretty powerful. So generally 10 power cards start at 4, right? You have like Sentry people are playing, and then fives have a lot of things that are 10 or above. So if you can go on 4, you play a 10 power, on 5 you play a 10 power. You can even play Magic, right? So if you play Magic on 3 and then 4, 5, 6, then this is 0 mana on turn 7, right? So that's already like super threatening. So being able to just drop 11 power, kind of like a death, could be a really powerful tool. What if you play this with death? Okay, now we're cooking. You add death in as well, right? So that you could go death plus Skaar plus a 7 energy worth of cards on the final turn. That's going to be so hard to deal with. Maybe we're cooking, right? So we're not. This isn't refined, but that is an idea. But potentially, regardless, like this seems like a card that can see play. It does have that like weakness of like, hey, you want to Shang-Chi this, but right now you're really not seeing that much Shang-Chi. I'm honestly not seeing. as much Shang-Chi as we used to be seeing before the nerf. So, you know, during this meta, you might see more Shang-Chi, but like a month later, you might not be. So, potentially could be a really nice card to play. So I'm kind of hopeful for it. As long as you're building around it, right? It is a card you have to build around, so that does make it a little bit worse. But I do think the potential is there, so I'll give it like a 7 out of 10 as well. Next up, we have Caiera. A lot of people like this card. Just because they don't like Killmonger, I'm guessing, right? Because I think the 1 cost not being destroyed is more important. I do think 6 costs not being destroyed is pretty good as well. But, you know, for Shang-Chi. So if you are playing that Skaar deck, you might also be playing this, and that might make the Skaar deck a little bit more consistent because you don't have to worry about the Shang-Chi, at least for the 6 drops, right? You still have to worry about the 4 and the 5. But generally, like that's still not bad. So I could definitely see this being like turning Kazar back into the meta, because Kazar has that huge weakness of like, Killmonger just blows everything. So I do think this helps a lot. So, you know, seems like a good addition for those type of decks. The stat line isn't horrible. So if you're liking just Kazar decks, this seems really good. Other 1-drops that are good, Bounce could use this as well. So there are other decks besides Kazar, right, that could definitely take advantage of this, as well as decks that run 6 drops. Hela, I don't think Hela would play this though, right? Like the 6 is a little bit awkward unless you're just playing like a high evolutionary, right? Like, but you'd rather be playing Cyclops for sure, right? Like than this. So that one, this the 6 drop, it's probably simpler, right? You could just put this in as just generically there, but it doesn't really feel like it's that important compared to saving the 1-drops where that's game losing. So seems like a pretty good card, does its job well. So, you know, 7, 8 out of 10, which is my rating for every card so far. That's what I've learned here. But yeah, it seems okay. Next up, we have Hercules. All right. I'm not giving this 7 out of 10. All right. The first one, this one moves to a location. I'm not super sold on Hercules, unfortunately. It's in the wrong universe, though. Chad told me that Hercules is in Marvel for some reason, even though it doesn't make sense to me. I don't get the lore, but the first time another card moves here, so you're just moving other cards. Like, the nice thing is you can move your own cards. So if you're playing like Craven and stuff, if you're playing like Silk and stuff, you can move your other cards. But is that powerful? I guess you could go like Hercules 5, Vulture, Ghost Rider 6, I guess. And then like you can also do like Hercules, Heimdall, and then move there and then move back. I mean, there's an idea, but it feels so awkward. And the issue I have is every time we see a move surgery card that looks potentially good, right? We play it and it doesn't feel that good. It doesn't feel great. It feels like it's very clunky. It's very combo centric. It's very reliant on other cards to work. Same thing with Hercules, very clunky, combo centric, cost a lot for mana, right, to start doing the combo. Obviously, there are some setups where it's really good, but the most powerful thing in deck design is consistency. How likely you're going to get this combo going off, you know, game after game, and it doesn't feel like Hercules is really consistent in its design. So I'm really going to lower this a little bit, maybe like 4 out of 10. It's not like 0, because I do think there are some combos which are just very good, right? Like with move decks, if you can move them twice, right? Like a lot of the a lot of the move synergies, like being able to move twice is really good. But are you able to consistently make that setup happen game after game with Hercules? Probably not. And it doesn't do anything by itself. So that's where I'll lower it down. But the potential's there, so I'll give it some hope. Next up, we have Miek, I believe is how you pronounce it. If that's wrong, then I'm not helping you. If it's wrong, it's wrong. So after your turn, If you discard any cards, you gain +1 power for each, and you move. The move is not that relevant, right? Essentially, it's you gain 1 power for each you discard. So it's kind of like a 1-drop. You know the card, guys. You play the game. You know the card, the discard card I'm talking about, the 2/0, whatever. It's like a 1 cost for that. It just gets half the value. So this could end up being, a lot of times you want to play with MODOK. So you're discarding usually like 5 or 6 cards with MODOK. So this will probably end up being like a 1/6, a 1/7, which is not bad, right? Which is pretty good for a 1-drop. So I think this is just a good 1-drop. And I will say, discards don't have the best 1-drops, right? You have Blade, right, which is okay, but I'd much like, a lot of times you're already discarding your whole hand, right? You don't need another Blade target if you play MODOK. So, you know, this just gives you a 1/7 for a discard. Seems good. So I think if you love discard, this is like a 9 out of 10. You know, like the one caveat is like, yeah, they can killmonger you. So, but nice thing as well with this card is that as long as you play it like before the MODOK, you're good. So you don't. So as long as you play before turn 5. Now the question is, like, you already fill most of your curve, right? You have a 2, you have a 3, you have a 4 most of the time. So usually 1 is when you want to play it. So that's the downside. However, let's say on 4 you can play 1 and a 3. That's fine too. So you play 1 and a 3, and then you set up the MODOK on the 5th turn. So seems good. Like seems like you're gonna be playing this in discard decks. So it's like 9 out of 10 for the discard engine. Seems good. Doesn't have any like stat weaknesses, or like it's not ongoing, right? So it's not gonna be like, oh, you can steal this, or you can, I mean, even if you steal this, your opponent's not playing discard. So generally just seems safe. The move isn't that problematic in discard. Discard doesn't like fill all the cards with stuff, right? So the one issue, okay, though, but this might also be a positive, is that if you're playing Dracula, we're going really hard on discard. If you're playing Dracula, you play this last turn, you discard the Apocalypse. Oh, whoops! Now this moves. So, good thing is your opponent won't know where it's moving, but they will know it's not moving where it is. So, that is something to consider. You know, maybe that's the one caveat that you have to keep in mind when you're building. But that's still like not bad, and it also makes it like, hey, this could be a 1/8, right, instead of a 1/7. So there's definitely a lot of potential for this card. So I'm still gonna keep the rating. I think this, if you're a discard player, this is good for you. Next up, we have Grandmaster. So this one had a lot of hype, and I can see it too, right? I'm like, the one caveat for this card is that it's like a combo card that's slightly clunky. And there are other cards that do this type of ability, right? Maybe not for on reveals, right? Absorbing Man does this essentially as well, right? So it's like a 2-mana Absorbing Man, you know. So that's not bad-ish. That's not bad-ish. So I could definitely see the potential, but Absorbing Man's not really a card that sees that much play. But it eventually could. Like, I don't think Absorbing Man is unplayable. It's just slightly awkward. And I just think this could have that same issue where it's slightly awkward, though. There's definitely some potential in there. But what is the potential? Right? That's the caveat. I guess you could play it with Ironheart. Ironheart would be pretty good, right? For 2 mana. There's a couple like early game on reveals that are really good, so you just copy that kind of thing. So obviously there's going to be something that people are going to find out that's really good. I'm just going to be skeptical at the moment, so I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Not horrible, right? That's still okay, but I just think it's going to feel more awkward to play in game than it feels in Theorycraft. That's my takeaway. And then the last one, I believe, is Better Ray Bill. So you shuffle Stormbreaker in your deck. Stormbreaker is just Thor's hammer, in my opinion. Except it's a 0/1 instead of a 0/0. You double Beta's power instead of, you know, +6, which is what the other one does. So pretty good. Honestly, you go from a 4/5 to a 4/10, and then you're like, what? Thor goes from a 3/4 to a 3/10. This costs one more. However, the thing is, this just makes that deck significantly better because now you have an extra tool for your Jane Foster. So I just think this is going to be really good for that type of deck. And that deck is already pretty good. There's a lot of other combos being used here. 310 into a 310 to a 410 is like not bad, right? And you keep in mind you have Skaar probably at that point, right? So turn 5. Well, the problem is like you can't, unless you're playing Magic, right? You can't like make both of them work. However, if you get them early, you could still do that with Skaar. But overall, you could also buff this card, right? Which is another consideration. I don't think that's gonna really happen in general, just because it's like, when do you do that? You want to play Thor on 3. You want to play Beta on 4, right? You want to play Jane Foster on 5. So when do you have the time to buff this? You're playing Nadina or Koye? Like, what are you doing? So I don't see where the window you have to play this or to buff this, but still pretty cool. So I think it's great in those type of decks. And I like that deck. I think it's strong. So probably 8 out of 10. Not 10 because, you know, it's still a 4/10, which isn't bad, but it isn't like super crazy. The power is from all the other extra synergies that you have with Jane Foster decks, you know, having 0-cost cards and stuff like that. So overall, super playable. But yeah, those are the ones coming on. This is just some bundles. Someone is asking for bundles, I believe. But yeah, it's an interesting 2 weeks, right? Personally, you know, I think Firestar is the one to watch out. Right? We'll do the spotlight reviews when it gets there, but overall, lots of interesting cards. Like nothing like too bad, right? Like nothing I'm like, oh my god, you know. Hercules, you know, like move people need to have something, so I'm not hating, but yeah, that's the video. Watch that Snappening video, guys. Like, you know, like, what are you doing here? It's way better. It's a lot funnier. I'm in it anyways, you know. But yeah, that's all we got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marvel snap. Your skills will be